crypto episode from Decentra Studios, where I talk about all things crypto, from my understanding. Today is an interesting day. Well, yesterday really was an interesting day. It was two big things that happened yesterday. Yesterday was the launch of two very significant crypto projects. The first one is known as the scavenger mine from Midnight Token from the Cardano ecosystem, which I have not set up yet because it is kind of complicated. They want me to sign up with it for another wallet. It has to be an unused wallet, so I have to go get another unused wallet. And every time I do one of these crypto drops or mining scavenger hunts and whatnot, it's always very technical, and it takes me a while to figure out the mechanics of how everything works, because I don't know all of the terms, and some wallets don't do other things that other wallets do, and there's like a huge labyrinth of wallet puzzles to solve when I do these kinds of things. So I do plan on participating in the scavenger mine, but I have to set aside time in order to participate in that successfully. Now, I know I'm a little late, but I'm not really worried about it because I did register for the Glacier drop, and I am getting Midnight tokens. I'm not going to say how many, but I'm getting Midnight tokens, and I'm happy with that. And then I'm really just going to do the scavenger mine out of pure fun. Even though I will be happy to get Midnight tokens, I'm just doing it just to be a participant, really. That's really my main concern. The second big launch in the crypto world that happened yesterday was the launch of something very exciting to me, of Bitcoin OS. I believe it stands for Bitcoin Operating System. That's what it says here. Today, Bitcoin OS, the unifying operating system. So I'm assuming it's called Bitcoin Operating System. It's not, please correct me. Sometimes getting information on these things is a little bit ambiguous for me personally. And so let's see what it says in the About section. Bitcoin OS is an open protocol designed to extend Bitcoin's role from a secure monetary network into a foundation for programmable, scalable, and interoperable internet economy. Built with Bitcoin as its settlement layer, Bitcoin OS introduces tools that enable developers to build decentralized applications, financial services, and cross-chain solutions while preserving Bitcoin's security guarantees. Launched in 2025, Bitcoin OS focuses on addressing four key challenges that have limited blockchain adoption: scalability, programmability, fragmentation, and trustless interoperability. By creating a unified operating system on top of Bitcoin, Bitcoin OS provides infrastructure for both developers and institutions seeking to build reliable, scalable applications anchored in Bitcoin's security model. Scalability and Layer 2's Bitcoin OS employs rollups and execution environments that qualify as true Bitcoin Layer 2 solutions. Using its BitSnark and Grail technologies, BOS ensures that gas fees are payable in Bitcoin, that Layer 2 networks inherit the security of Bitcoin base layer, and that bridging between Bitcoin Layer 1 and Layer 2 is fully trustless. This allows the network to process transactions at sub-second speeds and at lower costs, removing throughput limitations traditionally associated with Bitcoin. Programmable assets and token standards. The protocol introduces a universal token standard that enables programmable tokens to exist on Bitcoin and interact across multiple chains. These tokens feature asset-centric logic, supporting use case such as staking, governance, and issuance, without being confined to limited models like runes or BRC20. This flexibility opens the door for developers to design decentralized finance, DeFi, and institutional-grade applications on Bitcoin. Unified ecosystem and user experience on Bitcoin OS addresses the fragmented user experience across blockchains by introducing SLAM nodes, which streamline multi-chain interactions using zero knowledge proof (ZKs). These nodes create the feel of a single unified chain while preserving the integrity and independence of each network. This approach simplifies development, improves user experience, and lowers barriers to entry for new participants in the crypto economy. Trustless bridging, one of BOS's central contributions, is a trustless bridging mechanism verified directly on Bitcoin through zero-knowledge proofs. This system eliminates reliance on third-party custodians or insecure bridging solutions, enabling Bitcoin and other assets to move seamlessly between chains and execute environments with Bitcoin-level security. Privacy features. Bitcoin OS supports privacy-focused rollup and protocols, allowing users to conduct financial transactions without exposing all activity to public networks. These features expand Bitcoin's utility for individuals and institutions requiring confidentiality without sacrificing transparency where needed. Use cases and adoption of Bitcoin OS enables a range of use cases. Okay, that's the title. Use cases and adoption for Bitcoin OS. This Bitcoin OS enables a range of use cases, from high-value institution DeFi to consumer-facing applications requiring fast, low-cost settlement by aligning programmability and scalability with Bitcoin's reputation as a secure, widely trusted asset. BOS is positioned to support both retail adoption and enterprise-level solutions. Governance and community. Bitcoin OS operates as an open ecosystem, encouraging contributions from developers, researchers, and institutions worldwide. Its design leverages Bitcoin's neutrality and security as a foundation for shared innovation, rather than introducing a new siloed blockchain. Conclusion. Bitcoin OS represents an attempt to unify the crypto ecosystem around Bitcoin while addressing critical limitations of scalability, interoperability, and programmability. By anchoring new technologies and applications to the most established blockchain, Bitcoin OS aims to transform Bitcoin from a store of value into the backbone of a global, programmable economy of trust. All right, that was a giant mouthful. Now, they're making a huge amounts of strong claims here, and they're supposed to. All cryptos try to do this. They all try to say that our crypto is the most special because of these reasons, and they're usually reasons that sound like a bunch of mumbo jumbo, right? That's a normal thing in crypto. However, maybe Bitcoin OS may not be the best thing since sliced bread. Okay, maybe it's not the greatest. Maybe it's not the next Bitcoin like everyone tries to claim to be, or the Ethereum killer as everyone tries to do. Maybe it's not those things. But Bitcoin OS, I think, does have a strong use case. I think that the valuation for Bitcoin OS will appreciate over time because it is a usable technology that helps with interoperability. And apparently they have strong privacy functions, which everyone's tripping about for privacy. There's a lot of narratives in the crypto market right now. You got RWAs, you got privacy coins, you got DeFi, you got governance, right? You got AI, which is a huge one. You got everything centered around Bitcoin, right? You got layer 2s. There are a lot of narratives that are out there in crypto. And so Bitcoin OS seems to be focused on the tech. It's not really focused on chasing a narrative. It just has tech that may be relevant to narratives that are out there. That's what I like about it. It's not a narrative chasing coin. It's a token or a coin. It's a token. It's a token that seeks to be a bridge between Bitcoin, Ethereum, and Cardano. As of right now, that's what it effectively is. But that's what it seeks to be. So I am highly intrigued by Bitcoin OS. I don't think that they're a rug pull ICO, right? Because they just ICO'd. and you're getting it on dirt cheap right now. So I personally am buying only BOS right now. I'm buying only BOS. And we will see where that takes me into the future. But I want as many of these as I possibly can get, because BOS will have a symbiotic relationship with Cardano and possibly Ethereum. But more importantly to me, Cardano. I am heavily invested in the Cardano community. It is my favorite blockchain. It is my favorite cryptocurrency. However, I think that Bitcoin OS and Cardano will mutually benefit from each other. And that is why I am a huge proponent of picking as many of these tokens up as possible during this launch, right? Because it launched. It's now trading live on all sorts of different things. BitBuy, Kraken, even PancakeSwap. It's even on PancakeSwap. So it's trading live on some pretty good exchanges. And I'm trying to get as many of these coins as I possibly can get responsibly. And then if I have to hold on to them for 6 years, that's what I'm going to do. Now, why am I going to do that? Well, I'll show you why I'm going to do that. If I believe that Bitcoin OS, personally, if I believe that this token, which is only on its trajectory down right now, which is fine. That doesn't bother me. But if I believe that Bitcoin OS has inherent value as a technology, right? And I extend my time horizons to about 5 to 6 years, let's just say. Honestly, to be conservative, you want to extend it to about 8 years, right? In crypto. Then, if I'm taking a long-term horizon on buying these at less than a penny, let's look at what other cryptos have done. Well, Cardano is comparable to Bitcoin OS because it only has a 35 billion circulating supply of ADA, right? I wish they could show us a circulating supply chart so I can see the growth of total supply of any cryptocurrency at any time, but I'd have to dig for that. That's not a chart here. So if you look, so let's go back to Cardano. If you look at Cardano and you go to the all-time chart, according to CoinMarketCap, its opening on CoinMarketCap was 2 pennies, right? So if you bought as many Cardano when it was worth 2 pennies as possible, and then you waited 8 years, at some point during that 8 years, that Cardano that you bought for 2 pennies a piece would have at some point been worth $3.10, which here it populates as 285, but the peak on multiple exchanges does show $3.10. So, 2 penny buy-in, right, to $3.10. Those are insane gains, and that is my overall strategy, right? If this cycle is a dud and I don't make pretty much no money at all this cycle, I'm not worried because my time horizon is longer than that. And in the long run, I think that Cardano is going to appreciate in value exponentially. I also think the same thing for Bitcoin OS. I do think that Bitcoin OS is going to appreciate in value eventually. It may not happen this cycle, and I'm not banking on it. What I'm banking on is getting all the tokens for less than a penny and then waiting many years. And if it even goes up to $1, that was an investment well worth my time and money. And the reason why I compared it to Cardano is because there's only going to be a max supply of 21 billion Bitcoin BOS, which is funny because that's kind of copying after 21 million. So now you can track the tokenomics and you can track the growth of the price appreciation through a conversion with Bitcoin, because there's only ever going to be 21 million Bitcoin. There's also only going to be 21 billion BOS. So you can always just convert your price valuations for Bitcoin, and then when BOS is fully matured, you can just apply those with a conversion on BOS. because it's simply just moving decimal points a few places back, right? So that's really interesting. Now, I'm not sure if that's going to work out in application. That's all theoretical. But it's very interesting that there's 21 billion Bitcoin OSs, and there's 35 billion ADA. Now, you're going to say, oh, that's 15 billion more, or 14 billion more, whatever. But that's not the point. The point is that the overall amount is more similar to each other than compared to the rest of the market. If you look at the rest of the market, for example, XRP, everyone loves talking about this one, they have a circulating supply of 60 billion XRP, which means that it takes almost twice, at current time, it takes almost twice the amount of liquidity for XRP's price to go up than it does Cardano's. Okay, that's what that means. Cardano has 35 billion ADA. So the price action for Cardano is going to be more relevant to BOS than XRP, right? Let's look at another one. Let's look at Tron. Tron has a circulating supply of 94 billion. Not nearly as comparable. There's only 21 billion BOS, which means it takes less liquidity for the price of BOS to appreciate than it takes for how much liquidity that Cardano needs, or how much liquidity that XRP needs, or how much liquidity that Tron needs. Are we following here? I hope so. So the less amount of coins in circulation equal the less amount of liquidity to increase the price. Now, HBAR is also pretty comparable. So you can also look at HBAR as a simulator for price action for BOS, even though it has basically twice the amount of BOS. You just take the price action and then you divide it by 2, right? That's what I would do. And this is all just simple surface layer analysis, by the way. This is not like what they do with the technical charts. It's not. I don't do technical charts the way they do them. I let them do that, and then I watch their videos because I find them interesting and I like learning from them. But I don't look at charts that way. I have a more broad time horizon. I have a more broad look. I'm more of a historical investor, and I'm more of a market investor. I move with markets. I don't move I don't go with brand. I move with markets, and I move with technology. It's because technology shapes markets, but that's a completely different subject matter. You can use Hedera as some sort of like theoretical simulator for Bitcoin OS price action. They're only going to ever have 50 billion HBAR. That's quite a lot of tokens, by the way. Remember, Bitcoin only has 19.94 million Bitcoins in circulation, and it's only ever going to have 21 million. That's not that much Bitcoin, right? How much Ethereum is there? Well, the reason why Ethereum's price is so high is because there's only 120 million Ethereum in circulation. So it takes less liquidity for the price of Ethereum to go up. Now, granted, Ethereum does have a whopping $453 billion of liquidity in its market cap. So that's also the reason why it has been very successful. However, it still does equate to less liquidity in order to increase the price. So you can jump the price up really high and really fast flashes. As you can see, that manifests in the actual price action. You see the price going up and flashing down, right? That's because of how many tokens there are circulating. Now, this price action starts to level out over time because people start to itemize the token with decimal points. And decimal points can go on to infinity in the opposite direction. So eventually that starts to level out. But in the beginning of a launch, a low amount of circulating supply equals more volatility, which equals higher risk, but also higher rewards. So, for example, the reason why I'm so bullish on this failed experiment of mine known as ICP so far, this is the reason why the ICP price fluctuates so volatilely, is because there's only 539 million ICP as compared to ADA's 35 billion amount of ADA that's in the market. There's only 539 ICP in the market, and so it creates more volatile price action. That's why I don't drop my bricks and lose my marbles when Internet Computer goes down to a whopping $2.83, which CryptoVisor did call. So I'll give him props for that. He said that Internet Computer will go back down to $2 range. he was right. So CryptoVisor, shout out to you. You were right. However, you were wrong about Cardano. But that's just a friendly disagreement. As far as Internet Computer, I still think that it's not over for Internet Computer. I think Internet Computer is an undervalued token or coin, whatever term you want to use. I think it's undervalued, Internet Computer in general. Because the price can swing in a moment's notice out of nowhere with this coin. That's the reason why I bought it. So this is the kind of coin that you need to put on your orders and leave them. Put up your orders and leave them. But however, I don't feel comfortable having my ICP on exchanges right now. So I'm gonna have to time when I put it on the exchange and then when I open the order, when I put on the open orders, right? You do not want to try to live trade ICP because it can flash up while you're sleeping and then crash down and you can completely miss it. So you want to open up the open orders and you just want to pick your prices and check out your prices. And that's going to be the strategy for ICP. However, so far ICP has been clearly an objectively failed experiment of mine. So, I'm not blind to that. However, because of the tokenomics, because of the total circulating supply, it doesn't mean that can't turn around really, really quickly. So tokenomics and understanding circulating supply is very important to figuring out when to sell. It's very important to figuring out when, or it's very important to figuring out how a coin might behave in price action, because it all depends on supply and demand, and it depends on the circulating supply, right? Those are all fundamental variables in any sort of price action. Let's look at Solana. Solana has crazy swings to the upside. At some point, it's worth $20, and then at its peak, it's worth $260. Well, how many Solanas are there? There's 549 million Solanas. 550 million Solanas. Right? So you get these giant swings to the upside. Now, I bought ICP while it was around this range. So if ICP swings up to the upside to about $100, and I dip out, that's almost a 1,000% gain. So it's not that crazy, it's just volatility. Being able to handle volatility, right? That's what this game is about. If you can't handle volatility, you're gonna get eaten alive. If you can't accept the prospect of holding your coins at an 8-year horizon, you're going to get eaten alive. But the cool thing about investing is technically you haven't lost until you sold at a loss. So even though you might have a negative unrealized return at current time, you still technically haven't lost. And in a way, you could say that the fat girl doesn't sing until you tell her to sing in crypto. Unless the price of the coin goes to absolute zero, right? If the price of the coin goes to absolute zero, then the fat girl starts singing with or without your permission. However, if that is not the case, then the fat girl waits for your command to start singing in crypto, which is really interesting to think about. And that's the thing that gets me through these hard swings to the downside, especially in a bull market, is, well, technically I haven't lost until I sold. So that is an important principle to live by because it's true. You can see there's long periods of time in crypto where nothing happens and then out of nowhere, it goes and skyrockets. So if you're willing to hold for long periods of time, your chances of winning are not bad. So that's it for tokenomics, and that is why I think that Bitcoin OS is a good investment for myself, because I am seeing a new, fresh technology coin launch at dirt cheap prices. And it might even go down lower from here. And I will pick them up. And if they go lower, I'll pick them up even more. Because I believe in the long run, it's going to be well worth buying these coins when they were worth almost nothing. There's only a circulating supply right now of 470 million Bitcoin OSs. So if Bitcoin OS takes off, how could it take off, right? Well, if there's only a circulating supply of 470 million Bitcoin OSs at current time, and for some reason Bitcoin OS becomes a cultural sensation for whatever reason, the price of each of the tokens that I hold are going to exponentially increase by a lot. Now, I can't tell you by how much, but it's going to shoot up because that's not a lot of tokens circulating. Not really. Not when you look at the Solana price charts and the ICP price charts. So think about that. That's something that I think about all the time. Now, as far as the Bitcoin cycles, which I know everyone's so nervous about, oh no, it's coming the end of October. The cycle's coming to an end. Generally speaking, that might be true, but you can see that each of the cycles, they peak at different points in time. Sometimes they peak earlier. Sometimes they peak later. Let's look at this, for example. In this cycle, this peak happened in December. We're not in December yet, are we? No, we're not. There was a peak in this cycle in December, so it's not over. In this cycle, when was the cycle peak for this one? This cycle peak for this one was early November, which is coming right up, right around the corner, right? What about this cycle peak? Let's zoom in a little bit. About this cycle peak, when did this happen? That one also happened in December. Ooh. All right, what about this cycle peak? Because this is a cycle peak right here. What about this one? This one happened in June. Was this even 4 years away? 11, 12, 13, 14 to 13. Yeah, that was 4 years. It was basically 4 years away. So this is the first cycle peak, technically speaking. Let's find it. This is the first cycle peak, technically speaking, and it peaked in June. This is the only cycle peak that peaked in June, according to this chart. I'm going solely based off of this chart. Every other cycle peak happened in December, December, and early November. Early November is right here. So people are freaking out because, well, it could be October, right? It can always be October. Cycle peak could have already happened. You know, you always have to accept that possibility, because this is the cycle peak. It's 126.8, happened October 6th. It's possible that was the peak. And it did meet my bare minimum price prediction of $125,000 Bitcoin. That was my minimum. It did meet that. So, in my opinion, that could have been the peak. It could have. However, it's not clear that it was yet. And we have multiple cycles in the past where the peak happened in December. So, I would say that there is no definitive proof that the cycle is over. That's what I would say. Get rid of that. Let's look at some other charts. The Bitcoin rainbow chart. If you see, the Bitcoin diminishing returns theory is in effect here in this chart, right? And you can see that in the first few cycles, it would go into the red. The Bitcoin would go into the red territory of the rainbow, and then even exceed the red territory of the rainbow, right? And then in the cycle after that, it would go into the red territory of the rainbow, right? Cycle previously to that, it didn't even enter red territory. It went into orange and it peaked at orange, but did not enter red. This cycle, Bitcoin hasn't even entered yellow territory. Bitcoin has not even entered yellow territory. So this suggests two things. Either A, Bitcoin's not going to yellow territory this cycle. It's possible. That'd be a huge bummer. Or B, This cycle is going to go on a little bit longer. How much longer is unknown. It could go all the way to, people are saying March. I'm suspicious of that. I think it could, in my personal opinion, go to January. It could just go flash up to yellow in December and then go away. Anything could happen. Point here is that the data suggests that the cycle is not over yet. That's what the data suggests, according to this. Also, the M2 money supply is only increasing further. And in the wake, here you can see that this has only been going up. And in the wake of the interest rate cuts, this number will still only go up. And if we get announcements that QT, quantitative tightening, is ending, that number will still only continue to go up, which this number represents total amount of dollars that could find its way into Bitcoin. And if numbers find their way into Bitcoin, they're going to find their way into Cardano. They're also going to find their way into Bitcoin OS. I don't know how much, but that liquidity, I think, will come into those two different projects. So in conclusion, if you have a long horizon view and you believe in the coins that you're buying because you have been following the project and you see the valid use case that it can have an effect on the market and that eventually liquidity will enter that market. If you think that, then that is how, then that is not a bad way to assess the value of a crypto, in my opinion. I definitely think that process about Bitcoin OS. I think that Bitcoin OS will have a market where liquidity will come into it. How much liquidity is in question, but I do think that it will appreciate in value to some degree. And no matter how much it appreciates in value, with the tokenomics of only having 21 billion BOS in circulation, of only having circulating supply of 470 million BOS, right? A max of 21 billion and a circulating supply of 470. The possibility of the price action moving dramatically to the upside is there. And so it could be nothing. This whole project could fail and I could waste all my money. That is always a possibility in crypto. However, I see this as a golden layer 2 opportunity.